Nikki, you want to get down with OPP and why?
Yeah, I thought one of the cool things that I had heard on a couple of other people's podcasts or even, writers that I was following on Medium is just giving a shout out to someone else that's inspiring you as a creative artist. And so I was listening to different podcasts to get a better understanding. What was I missing? What kind of did I like format wise, guest wise, etc. So I thought of this concept of I'm going to do an episode OPP where I did a shout out to other people's podcasts that were inspiring me. But I also now I'm on a circuit of trying to talk on other people's podcasts, one, so I can see it live. What is your process like? How are you as a host? And it gives me exposure to their show as well, because then I'll listen to a few of their shows, make sure it's a good fit to match audiences. And I met a lot of cool people at Podcast Movement. So that was fun too, that just be able to do podcast swaps with people I actually met in person, not just on Zoom.
So there's a lot of good takeaways with you doing other people's podcasts. There was a couple things. One is that you are basically learning and getting ideas. And the other one is you're basically hacking other people's networks where you're able to get in front of a few of their listeners and maybe be able to bring them over to your podcast. And I like that both. You were able to say, what do I like? What don't I like? What are they doing that I'm not doing? What are their processes? What makes it easier on them? And if I can throw out one additional benefit to OPP, because you mentioned a ton, there is an interesting thing that happens when you have when you share listeners from other podcasts. When their podcast, somebody else is listening to their podcast, it actually puts you next to them. And so it says to their listeners, you might also like Nikki Green's podcast.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge hack. The more you get to be on other people's shows, and if you can convert a couple of their listeners to yours, now the algorithms for Apple Podcast are actually going to be promoting you more. So I thought that was another really good one. So you're learning and growing, you're getting on other people's networks, and you might possibly hack into the system to allow those algorithms to benefit your podcast.
Fingers crossed on that.
Yes. What systems and or tools have you found extremely useful in your podcasting process?
Yeah. And, right now there's a ridiculous amount of free live webinars out there, and I can't handle them anymore because I think this time with podcasting over the past 6 months has really taught me that bad audio will not be tolerated, right? And that issues with the technology and not knowing how to mute people, all these problems, it's just really wasting people's time. And the beauty of podcasting that I've learned is to refine it, but also, as we talked about earlier, in a more natural way. So there's still a natural conversation going, but it is a bit more of an intimate setting. If you put more than 12 people on a Zoom call, there's no conversation, there's nothing happening, right? It's just people chit-chatting over each other, not on mute. With podcasting, I start with Zoom so that I have both the video and the audio together. It also gives me a good connection with the person so that I can see them, I can see their body reaction, just like I would if we were having a real conversation and sitting side by side. The hard part I learned with Zoom is making sure I have separate tracks for all of these things, separate video, separate audio. So again, it makes the editing easier. We are using Descript for our editing. Coming from Podcast Movement, we've learned a whole bunch of new tools and things that we're going to try over season 2. So give us again some leeway as we practice and start to again hone our craft. Again, the benefit with Descript is not just getting the ability to edit the video and the audio, but also be able to get that transcript in seconds. And it's been fairly accurate, other than maybe a couple of difficult accents where I've had to go through and do the editing. So those are kind of big ones.
any specific template that you might use? Or another question would be, you talked about Zoom, which is where you record. How about is there a calendar link that you use?
Yeah, so through all my scheduling, whether it's for speaking engagements or my book tour or just doing one-on-ones with people, I use Calendly. It plugs in super smoothly with my website, and I can quickly send them the link. I can have specific links for each parts of my business. So specific to the podcast itself, I have podcast guest as a part of the link. If it's for something else, right, there's a different ending. And then I can have different set times and schedules. So I also balance my time. I want to be focused when I get on a podcast. I don't want to be running from another meeting, stressed out, not sure what I'm talking about or who I'm talking to. I want to be planful and have a good bracket of time before and after to take some deep breaths, and prepare and also decompress versus other stuff, maybe I can compact them more in a day and have 5 or 6, one-on-ones with people. So
I'm curious, you mentioned that you have your Calendly set up with different links for your podcast and for your business and for speaking. I'm just wanted to find out if you try to time block any of that. So like the only podcasts that you do are Wednesday evening, or they're only evenings at 4 p.m. or something like that, where I might have a podcast on this day at this time.
yeah, I also try to time block it around, what's going on in the rest of the house, right? And so when I think about like needing to record, try to do it in the morning when the neighbor's not mowing the lawn and, things that I know are generally going on in the neighborhood. I don't try to do any podcast recording on the weekends when I know people might be in and out of their cars and driving, around the neighborhood. So I think about time blocking in a lot of those ways too. And I don't work a traditional week. I don't work Monday to Friday. I do try to follow a bit of a creative process. I do about 6 or 7 days straight. And then I take 4 days off. I find it's a lot better for the creative process. And some of those days, maybe half days, I go, grab a bike, go get outside. We'll see what happens in the winter, but balancing those things. And so Calendly plus, connecting that with my Google Calendar allows me to do a lot of that blocking and customizing of each option. So
If you leave her a rating and a review, an honest rating and a review, let her know that you heard about her here on this podcast. I'm sure that she would be happy to hear that it works what she's suggesting to go on OPP.
exactly. And don't hesitate. I think that's true as me as it is for other podcasters. We're very approachable people. Most of us haven't gotten this vision of grandeur, but reviews are fantastic. They support our business. They support our hobby and our vision of what we're trying to build. Email, DM on social, all of it is fantastic. Don't hesitate to reach out. And, I'd love to hear from you guys.